Welcome everybody. This is the streaming operations. We're going to take you through some customer environment transitions pre and post VxRail deployment. My name is Bill Leslie. I'm a director at Dell Technologies covering our multi-cloud and VxRail technical marketing teams. I've got with me today Andrew Bormuth, who's the operations network engineer at Poet. And Andrew's going to join me on stage at the end to give you guys a little bit of what he's actually doing inside of his environment at Poet, and we're going to do a little bit of back and forth with that one. So I'm going to jump in here, Andrew. Thank you for being with us here today once again. I'd like to just jump right in. Quick question, who has more time than ever, less tasks than ever that you've got to do? Scott's my man over at Top Golf. He knows how to get things done. Look, we all have more to do. There's less time to do it. We're being asked to take on more and more. One of the things that we do on about an every other year basis is a study with IDC. And ever since VxRail came to market about 8 years ago, we've wanted to see how customers are deriving value. And one of the things that keeps coming back study after study is just how much operational efficiency customers are able to achieve with VxRail. And we see it time and time again. Poet here, Top Golf, they're seeing their total cost of operations lowered significantly by using hyper-converged infrastructure, VxRail, vSAN, in their environments. When you see a continued 60% or better return on value and reduction in overhead and efficiencies in the data center, that's saying that we're continuing to invest more and more and provide more value in the features that we're bringing out in our roadmap over and over in all of our releases. And we're going to touch on some of those here today. One of the surprising things is we're also seeing more efficiency in the security teams. There's more and more security releases happening on all the components that go into a VxRail continuously validated state than ever. And when we can see teams be more efficient with how those security patches get picked up, knowing that they're going to function the right way with the rest of their operating stack, that's a real benefit to not only you all, but to us, so that we know that you're in a much better operating state. We also see something very interesting, this 52% number on how quickly new applications can be deployed. When we talk about having to do more, it's getting new business services out, whether they're for your end customers or whether they're for in-house customers who are asking for new application stacks, new things to try out. Maybe a new business model requires some new applications that are needed. We know the importance of making sure that business can move faster, and that's one of the things that VxRail delivers on. The last one of this study that's really, really compelling is the fact that there's 94% less unplanned downtime. We all know that downtime is going to happen. Most everybody has downtime events that are planned over the course of a year. It's those unplanned ones that really cause a lot of challenge in the environment. Now, this is all because VxRail is underpinned by the HCI system software. No matter what type of way you're utilizing VxRail in your environment, it's the same software, the same operating model, whether it's cloud, using Cloud Foundation on VxRail, or whether you're at an extreme edge location with one of our new VD4000s that has the embedded hardware witness with it, so you can do your 2-node deployments anywhere you need to go. But we're doing things in the core data center, traditional OSA vSAN clusters, we're doing ESA clusters. We also have the capability to do dynamic nodes, which is a vSphere only cluster or a compute only cluster if you're using HCI mesh. We've added capabilities with our storage arrays so that you can use Dell storage arrays behind our dynamic nodes as well. And we're adding even more and more capabilities with our power store lineup, where we can actually lifecycle manage the power store array behind the VxRail. Great use case for a lot of our install base who's taking advantage of the power of Dell on Dell. We also have an offering inside the VxRail lineup called a satellite node. The satellite node is a single node that is managed from a central management cluster or vSAN OSA-based cluster. That cluster can also be running workloads on it, but that satellite node is great for locations that might have not a full 24/7 operation. They can take some limited downtime. Maybe a 9x5 or a 9x9 type operation might be in a retail setting. We also have 2-node, 3-node clusters. If you're doing Cloud Foundation, there's edge deployments. Now I mentioned this is all underpinned by that VxRail HCI system software. I want to talk about that for just a moment. There's 4 main areas of our software that are worth talking through. The automation and orchestration, those continuously validated states, the centralized management and support, and lastly, configuration and deployment. Last year, we talked a lot about the evolution of VxRail, all the feature innovation that we've brought over the last 8 years, and did kind of a timeline step through on all the little bits of automation. What gets lost is when you're doing very tiny incremental things, sometimes that value doesn't really come through in its entirety. One of the things I want to show you is just how much of those little enhancements add up over time inside of our LCM operations here on the next slide. But a couple things I'd like to point out here is, over the last year, we've opened up customer deployability of VxRail to our customers. They have node image management capabilities as well as configuration portal capabilities. We also have a consistent interface through vCenter with our VxRail Manager plugin. This is so that you guys don't have to learn multiple tools to the environment. Great way to cut down on the operational overheads, right? Reduce that complexity, streamline operations. And we do have a number of customers that are using our RESTful APIs at scale. You probably had packages delivered in the last few days at your home. Some of the largest delivery companies on the planet are using all of those different types of deployment scenarios that we just talked about at the edge and the core and the cloud environments for their operations. One of the unique things in LCM, and I like to hit on this because there's so much that goes into an update package, we call it a continuously validated state, is we're testing over 800,000 hours of total lab runtime on each of our full stack builds or continuously validated states. This is optimized, made sure that we can get through the entirety of that update process as cleanly as possible so that you don't have to go through test and dev, do your own sequencing, see what kind of issues you've got to mitigate during an upgrade cycle. Our engineering teams are doing that all on your behalf. Again, helping to operation get more streamlined in those environments. Best of all, we can do this with heterogeneous nodes, intermix of generation of hardware, so that no matter where you're at in your life cycle of purchasing VxRail nodes, you're able to keep your clusters as evergreen as possible. I mentioned the enhancements over the last 12 months. I'm going to build this slide out. It just helps to kind of put it all into perspective. 4 major releases that we had of VxRail innovation over the last 12 months, really on 3 levels of dimension with this. I'm going to take them on the horizontal rather than each release. We focused on preparing for an update, as well as handling and preventing update failures. It's really that in-between time that's really hard to diagnose and test out. And then actually troubleshooting failures on the back end, making sure that we can more quickly diagnose those. We've actually had Tiger teams inside of our engineering, product management, field service delivery groups, laying out what are the different scenarios that we need to be solving for? How do we fix what's going on in the environment? And these were some of the biggest hitting challenges that we saw across our install base. We had pre-checks for maintenance mode failure conditions, and I'll talk about pre-check here in a little bit. We've started to institute a smart bundle transfer so we can minimize the payload, especially for those edge sites on what's needed in the download package for the update. We've got reports so that if you are running custom components, you know what needs to be updated alongside of that, or at least to do another check alongside of it. We've built in more automation and backup capabilities as well so that you can back up the VxRail components before doing the upgrade. We also know how painful it can be when you go into maintenance mode in an update cycle, things don't happen quickly, timeout conditions might show up. We now have the ability to skip over a node if that's happening, come back to it at a later point in time so that that update can be more clean and hopefully successful. And lastly, we've tagged more and more of the common issues so that our support teams can diagnose commonly encountered issues during the upgrade, really helping to accelerate the overall time with that. On the pre-check health updates, this is something that can be done on a daily basis. Great to know that the environment's in a clean condition, making sure that there's readiness for the cluster update. Issues can be remediated a whole lot quicker with this. We run a script that's called VxVerify. It is going to check everything in vSphere, vSAN, vCenter, as well as the VxRail Manager components as one collective with that health check update. This is also available through Cloud IQ for VxRail. If you've got a larger Dell real estate of offerings, you can manage it through there as well. That health check is going to provide two different levels of warnings. One that is an error that you've got to fix before you proceed. The other is just a warning, which is a, hey, you might want to take care of this in the environment. And lastly, if there's any vCenter incompatibility, we're going to block that update. We know that that's a big no-no in the environment. We also provide a new update planning dashboard. This dashboard tells you what version of software you're at. There's links to the release notes so that you can read them. We can view the update advisor report that's going to tell you what all is in that new payload. Great for audit, right? Security audit compliance teams want to know what's in there, what happened in the last one. Great way that you can start to keep record of that for your security and audit teams. We also estimate the update cluster time in those dashboards. These are things, if you're doing them in a manual basis, you know how much time it takes to document all of this internally for all of those teams. We also have that update advisor report. We have the target that we want you to get to within that code base, and we can identify different version drifts as well in the environment. We can also show the expansion of each ESXi host for any of the subcomponent status that's within it, right? Lots of power in this information when you're asked questions, hey, what's going on in my environment? What do I need to do to fix all of this? Lastly, I mentioned the pre-check earlier. One of the things that's really cool about this is you're running the pre-check against the end state, and all the things that we've learned, let's say you missed 2-3 updates along the way, that new package and update pre-check is going to check against all the new things that we learned along the way too, to make sure that you can take care of those errors and warnings along the way in the environment. And then last, there's some of the update components with it. Let me bring Andrew up on stage, because as much as you like hearing a guy tell you about all these cool features, I want you to hear from Andrew on how Poet has utilized VxRail in the environment that they have. So Andrew, go ahead and introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do, what Poet does, and share with us.
Sure. Hi, I'm Andrew Bermuth from Poet Bioprocessing. I'm the Operations Network Engineer. One of the tasks that we recently completed was rolling out VxRails to 34 of our remote sites. And initially we started out, this was going to be a multi-year process. This was kind of planned out before I joined the network team at Poet. And it ended up being my project. So when we started, I think we did the first half in half a year. And my manager was under the impression it was going to take much longer, and I was like, why? It's pretty straightforward. We should be able to knock these out in the first quarter next year. So we got the other half, and sure enough, we got them all done in Q1 2023. So pretty happy with them.
So tell us a little bit about who Poet is and what you guys do, because I had no idea when I first heard, but you've got a pretty large scale operation.
Yeah, Poet is an ethanol company. We have 34 ethanol manufacturing sites throughout the Midwest. I'm really glad that nobody is going to ask me questions about the ethanol making process here, because I don't know a lot about that. I'm not an expert, but...
Okay. So previous to VxRail, what did you guys have installed in the environment, and what made you convinced that VxRail was the right solution?
Well, we had multiple servers, like a data server, SCCM, domain controller, some application servers. These were all physical machines. We've been able to virtualize all of these, which saved a lot of space in our server rack, and also from a budgeting standpoint made things a lot better.
So one of the things, and I'm not sure if I caught this, you also had Vertex servers as part of that as well?
Yes, yeah. Right. We went from physical servers for everything to Vertex and then to VxRail.
Okay. So now after the deployment, so you guys actually did self-deployment at some of the sites, right, after you learned a little bit with this. and having 34 sites around the world that you're dealing with, to do that in 8 months was pretty impressive. Tell me a little bit about what life is like after, now that VxRail is installed.
So before, we would have trouble keeping up with upgrades. They'd require downtime or just resources that we wouldn't have available because we're busy doing other things. But since we've moved to the VxRail, we've actually updated all 34 sites twice this year already.
And previous to VxRail, were you able to update all 34 sites in an update cycle?
Not even close.
All right. So the change that you've seen before and after with some of these new tools that we've introduced that look somewhat smallish in nature have actually allowed you guys to more efficiently roll through the entirety of this very large operation, get through all of those updates when you need to, when those security patches come out, which is really, I think, one of the things, we talk about our customers being able to achieve this. You're living and breathing proof that that can actually happen.
Yeah, post VxRail, we've been able to keep them up to date, like I said. It's just, the upgrade advisor was shown earlier, and it's beneficial that all the upgrades are contained in one update. You can see what's going to be affected, and the high availability of the VxRail means we start out upgrading them like we normally would after hours, but we've moved to actually doing them during the day when they're in production. And we've had some issues where we'll lose a node one was my fault, for example. Node's completely down, and users have no idea. I mean, it took us a number of weeks to get it back, and production was not affected at all.
Now, what I heard there is we got you your nights and weekends back so that you
Yes.
could be with your family, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm glad that we could do that. Now, sustainability is a big topic, and you're in the ethanol business. One of the things that you guys do is carbon recapture. Is that right? CO2 recapturing? Can you tell us a little bit about that, or is that outside a little bit of...
That's a little bit outside. We employ a lot of people that would love to stand up here and talk about subjects like that, but I just make the servers and network run for them.
So one of the things that when we talk about operational efficiency that we also like to hear about is what type of change now do you have in the day-to-day? How are you allocating your time maybe differently? How are you having your staff resource differently or focus on different things? Or is it just that we got you time back by the way that you're now working with VxRail?
We're able to focus on other things. That'd be more of a topic for my manager.
I'm sure he'd find ways to fill up your time.
Yeah, we're definitely staying busy, just not worrying about spending all the time upgrading servers we haven't upgraded in a year or however. Before it was more if something broke and we had to contact support and they wanted it up to date before they looked at it, that's when it would get upgraded, truthfully.
So in that update advisor, because you mentioned this, is there something in particular in that you found really useful to check or screen inside of that, whether it's on a daily basis or some type of recurring basis?
I can't recall using it like that, I guess. Okay. It's more of when we have an upgrade to apply, just going through and seeing what's going to be affected.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we see with a number of our customers is they might have NVIDIA GPUs in the environment. I keep going to Scott with Topgolf, who's going to be up on stage here next. Whether it's GPUs, whether it's recover point for VM, if you're using that comes with VxRail, we can do compatibility checks to make sure that those are also ready for the updates that are going to be in those packages, right? And we can now actually update those in the same VxRail update cycle so that you don't need to do multiple updates to multiple different component sets. We know how valuable it is to do one patch cycle, one update cycle, however you want to refer to it in your respective business. And that's why we keep focusing so heavily on investing in the actual update experience so that you guys can get the time back. Those nights and weekends are precious, right? We want to make sure that we don't get called when we're on a family vacation and, hey, something's wrong over here. By having those pre-checks happening on the regular basis, we're able to see quite a bit more in the environment as well. So great story with that. Andrew, anything else you'd like to share about Poet or your experience with VxRail?
I think we've covered everything that I can think of.
No, thank you for that. So, a couple things this week since it is Monday, and I know there's some folks that are watching online who won't be here in person, but for those that are here, please check us out in the Dell booth. We've also got a session in the Code Theater tomorrow. I'll be presenting over there. Actually, right after this, we've got another session with Topgolf and Daniel Chu, one of my team members. Going to be great with that one. And really appreciate all of you who are existing VxRail customers and those of you who are considering VxRail. We look forward to the opportunity to do business with you. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your VMware Explorer week.